Sojourner Truth was an abolitionist and a feminist during the 19th century. Truth escaped enslavement and rose to become a leader in the fight for equality and fair treatment for both women and African Americans. Sojourner Truth's birth name was Isabella Baumfree. She was born into slavery in Ulster County, New York, around 1797, and was first sold away from her family at the age of 9. Truth escaped with her infant daughter in 1826, and 1 year later, the state of New York emancipated all enslaved persons. In 1843, she officially changed her name to Sojourner Truth. Sojourner means traveler. Her chosen name represented her life, a traveler who preaches her truth. Truth met with Lincoln to share her stories and later helped recruit black troops for the Union Army during the Civil War. Sojourner Truth died on November 26, 1883, and is remembered today as one of the nation's first feminists and foremost abolitionists.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a champion for all rights of women. We know her best from her role in the women's suffrage movement. Born in Johnstown, New York, November 12, 1815, she was the principal author of the Declaration of Sentiments. Her father was an attorney, and he introduced Elizabeth to learning about the law. She attended the Johnstown Academy and then enrolled at the Troy Female Seminary, now known as the Emma Willard School. She met her husband, Henry Brewer Stanton, through her early involvement in the temperance and abolition movements. They moved into the Cady household in Johnstown before moving to Boston and then Seneca Falls, New York. Elizabeth was instrumental in the Seneca Falls Convention and the path to women's right to vote, which was passed with the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920. She died at age 86 on October 26, 1902. Her legacy in her writings and her actions in the women's rights movement continue to inspire us today.
Susan B. Anthony was a women's rights leader in the 1800s. She helped lead the way for women to gain the right to vote. She was born on February 15, 1820, in Adams, Massachusetts, and was able to read and write by the age of 3. From 1846 to 1849, she taught at a female academy in Canajoharie, New York, where she earned about a quarter of the wage as the male teachers. The rebuff of Anthony's attempt to speak at a temperance meeting in Albany, New York in 1852 prompted her to organize the Women's New York State Temperance Society and pushed Anthony further into activism. Susan B. Anthony was the co-founder of the Women's Suffrage Association and spent the rest of her life fighting for women to have equal rights and equal voice. Anthony died in Rochester, New York in 1906, 14 years before the 19th Amendment was passed, granting women the right to vote.
Monumental Women worked for 7 years to make this Women's Rights Pioneers Monument for Central Park possible. The site is part of Literary Walk, and Sojourner Truth, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Susan B. Anthony belong here because they changed the world with their words. So I've shown them working with words. They're gathered at a small table, doing what they loved best, thinking, arguing, forging resolutions, using their very different natures in a complementary way to fuel their struggle. They might be meeting in Stanton's home, where both Truth and Anthony had been overnight guests. The design is a contemporary evocation of the 19th century monument that should have been erected to these women in a park full of 19th century statues honoring men. Sojourner Truth has knitting in her lap. In photographs, Truth often displayed her knitting, which was intentionally symbolic. Knitting was not a skill taught to enslaved people. Knitting for soldiers was a patriotic duty, and it emphasized her status as a free woman and a lady. Anthony was famous for carrying her traveling bag, always full of documents, research for speeches she collaborated on with Stanton. Here it overflows with pamphlets for women's rights conventions, petitions to legislatures, and flyers for lectures by Sojourner Truth. Stanton has books and papers stashed under her chair, a feature common to statues of writers like the nearby male poets. In front is the 1848 Declaration of Sentiments, which begins, "All men and women are created equal." The 3 large books are by influential foremothers: Mary Wollstonecraft's 1792 A Vindication of the Rights of Women, Sarah Grimke's 1838 Letters on the Equality of the Sexes, and Margaret Fuller's 1845 Woman in the 19th Century. Stanton wears a brooch shaped like a sunflower, with shining flowers in the pattern of her dress, because she took the pseudonym Sunflower for her first published articles, and the sunflower later became an emblem of the women's suffrage movement. Anthony's brooch is a cameo of Minerva, the helmeted goddess of wisdom and strategy. Truth wears the kind of elegant jacket that she would wear at a women's rights conference, with victory wreaths woven into the brocade. Their hands tell a story, too. Truth emphasizes her eloquent voice with both hands. Her right index finger was partly amputated in an agricultural accident while she was enslaved. Anthony holds out a pamphlet that proclaims her one vast idea: votes for women. She's lightly touching Stanton's shoulder to draw her attention. Stanton has just dipped her pen in the inkwell and is about to write something on the blank paper she steadies with her left hand. The statues are portraits and at the same time represent aspects of activism: Truth speaking, Anthony organizing, and Stanton writing. Our rights were not gained by one dramatic action, but from long shared struggle. I hope that all people, especially girls and boys, will be inspired by the scene of monumental women of different races, different educational backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, and different economic status, working together to make the world better.